there, REMPCs. Welcome to Rules of Cool, where we interview very special guests, creators, gamers, designers, and world builders. I'm your host, Rem, and today we've got a whole panel of sci-fi authors brought together to work on one common story, The Tears of Perseus. I'll be chatting with the legendary Kevin J. Anderson, Jennifer Brozek, Kevin Steverson, William Allan Webb, DJ Bodden, and Kevin McLaughlin. This week's giveaway is a free digital set of the entire series of Tears of Perseus, including the yet unreleased 6th story. Type hashtag REMPC in the chat for your free entry to win, and don't forget that bits and subs get you additional bonus entries to win. Every 100 bits gets you a bonus entry, and subscribing gets you 7 whole bonus entries. Now, getting into the story, is this the end of humankind or the beginning of something new? Witness the fall of the Federation. Across 6 stories told by 6 veteran sci-fi authors, the Tears of Perseus series is a saga of rebellion from a colony's founding day to the final shots of the war. Each story is connected to the others and moves the doomsday clock forward, but the situation is far from hopeless. It's up to a dozen characters over the course of 300 years to chart a path to survival. This is a story of good people in bad situations and of perseverance at all costs, full of high-stakes decisions, high-tech military action, interstellar intrigue, and large-scale battles. Experience the conflict that almost ended it all. In humanity's darkest hour, establish your legacy, stand your ground, free your people, protect your homeworld, and hold fast against an implacable foe. Find out how we survive and if the species that emerges from the nuclear fire was worth saving. Now, time to get right into our conversation for this week. So stay tuned, REMPCs. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to my special guest today. I'm so excited to have you all on. I've been looking forward to this for weeks. I want to get right into it because we have a lot to talk about today. So we're going to do our first round with some of my favorite questions here. How did you first discover sci-fi or gaming? So go ahead and introduce yourself. I think we're going to go in the novella order, and then say how you got into sci-fi or gaming.
Okay, so I guess I am starting first. My name's Jennifer Brozek. I have actually forgotten the first question already because I have a cat sitting right here who's tapping me.
How did you discover sci-fi or gaming?
I remember back in the early 1970s sneaking down the stairs to watch Star Trek, the original Star Trek. While my parents watched it in Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Nice.
And eventually they allowed us to come just watch it with us. And then when we went to Belgium, I didn't have a TV, so I got into library. Books became my life. And my mom was a voracious reader, and she had all of the greats, very much all the sci-fi, Asimov and uh, Herbert, Lazarus Long, all the dead white guys that I really like. I can't remember.
Awesome.
My dad had the Destroyer, the Mac Bullen books. So I absolutely love them too, and Ian Fleming. So that's how I got into it.
Awesome. All right, who's next?
That would be me. My name is Kevin Steverson. I just remember in the 80s, going through my mom's collection of books. She was an avid reader, and it was all science fiction. She had stacks of the Analog magazine and Asimov and just reading, Verne and Wells and Heinlein, and even some of the older stuff, James Blish and Nelson Bond, just digging into it. And science fiction has always been my number one go-to. So it's always been that way.
Very nice to have you on. Who's our third novella?
That would be me, Bill Webb. My gateway was Robert E. Howard.
Mm.
And a friend of mine loaned me a copy of one of the old Lancer paperbacks that had the Frank Frazetta covers. And my mom saw it and told me I couldn't read it. So naturally I read it. And that progressed to me getting into gaming with D&D in 1976.
Woo!
When a friend of mine went to Chicago, came back with the original 3 books, and they were all 3 signed by Gary Gygax.
Amazing.
And so after that, I was pretty much done.
Cool. And who's our fourth book main author?
That would be me. Hi, folks. I'm DJ Bodden. I got into sci-fi, I guess from a very young age. I read Stephen King's It when I was 8 years old, and I think that definitely qualifies as sci-fi, even though you don't find it out until the end. And from there, it was Lord of the Rings. So I'm going to group in sci-fi and fantasy. And I grew up in Europe, so I didn't actually have a lot of access to the big sci-fi stuff. Like I read French sci-fi, which is like The Night of Time and some Albert Camus and some stuff like that, which you've probably never heard of, but it was actually kind of fun. And we read it in school. But I would go visit family in the States over the summer. So in my teens, I got into Warhammer and Star Trek and Star Wars. And just started tearing through omnibuses from there. Got into gaming as well. Harebrained Studio Shadowrun is a big favorite, as is their rendition of BattleTech. Love everything that's come out in Knights of the Old Republic, in The Force Unleashed, and in the Fallen Order series, which is then come into some of the Star Wars movies, which I really appreciate. The Dune movie, which was fantastic. Thank you, Kevin. And many others since then. So it's been a good decade for sci-fi fans.
Heck yeah, agreed. So that leaves, last but certainly not least,
not yet.
Our side ones, our side authors here, because Kevin Anderson, I believe you've written for all of these novellas, correct?
I wrote an original novella, which is number 5 in the series, but then I also wrote little connecting stories between.
Gotcha. So that's how they're co-written. Gotcha. So
right.
let's do Kevin McLaughlin first, and then we'll circle back around to Kevin Anderson.
You got to unmute, Kev.
Yeah. I'm Kevin McLaughlin, and I wrote the 6th novella in the series. In terms of when I got started on science fiction, I don't think there was ever a time when I wasn't. I remember when I was 4 years old going to watch the premiere of the Star Trek motion picture when it first released in New York City, and I had never seen, and very rarely since seen, standing ovations in a movie theater, but there were 3 standing ovations for that premiere.
Wow.
Which was pretty cool. Credits rolling when you first see the Enterprise, and at the end, 3 standing ovations for that, which was awesome.
Best feeling that like everyone's there and in it.
Pretty much geeked from birth.
That's awesome.
And then I started playing D&D when I was 7, so it just went on from there.
Great. Oh, so cool. And now I should say last but not least is Kevin Anderson.
Right. Well, and I did the 5th one in the whole series of Tears of Perseus, and then connecting stories all the way through. So I've got like my fingerprints everywhere throughout the thing. But I grew up in a really, really, really boring small farming town in Wisconsin, which meant there was nothing to do except use your imagination. And I saw the movie The War of the Worlds when I was 5 years old, and that just really got me hooked on Martians and science fiction. And there was like every Saturday there was sci-fi cinema, so I got to watch like Bad Rubber Monster 1950s movies, and I love those. And then my parents had a whole set of paperback classics of literature in the library, and so I grabbed all of the H.G. Wells and the Jules Verne, and I read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Journey to the Center of the Earth and everything. And then I discovered Andre Norton, and I read Frank Herbert's Dune when I was 11, and I read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and then I read all of John Carter of Mars, mainly because of the Frank Frazetta covers, Bill. I loved all of those. And now what you got to understand is this is like in the 60s. It is not like today when nerds are cool. Nerds were not cool when I was growing up. And so it's almost like you were this pedophile. You had to hide the fact that you're reading comics. You had to hide the fact that you're reading science fiction, and you get bullied mercilessly because you were reading the rocket ship stuff. And we get our revenge now. But and so I always wanted, I wrote the stuff. I wrote my first story when I was like 10 years old. And then when I was a freshman in college, I got into D&D with some other college friends, and our dungeon master was somebody I met in my creative writing class, who was Christine Catherine Rush. She was our DM, and she's a Hugo Award-winning science fiction author now. She's won a whole bunch of mystery awards. She's won the World Fantasy Award, and we did a D&D campaign, and I wrote the D&D campaign as a gaming fantasy trilogy that Aethon Books just re-released, the Hex World trilogy. And Chris Rush wrote the same campaign in her own fantasy book that Signet Books published back in the 90s. So that was a pretty damn effective D&D campaign, I guess. So,
wow. So we're going to need to bring you back on just to talk about that. Maybe we'll have a whole episode series. We'll see.
Right.
But gosh, I want to talk about all of it. Awesome. Oh, so welcome everybody. It's so great to have you. Now, before we get into Tears of Perseus, I want to give everyone a chance to kind of pitch what is something that you have worked on that is not Tears of Perseus, that like anyone just meeting you now here in our audience, what is the first book of yours or content or anything that they should pitch up in order to fall in love with you and then read the rest of everything you've ever written? So let's start through our order again and start with Jen.
Okay, so if you want to see what I do contemporary-wise, if you want it in space, you want my BattleTech stuff. And it's young adult, but I will break your heart anyway. Don't let the young adult fool you. The first one is Iron Dawn, and it is the Rogue Academy trilogy. And if you like a mashup of Blade Runner, Matrix, and Tolkien, that's Shadowrun for you in a near future. And I've got high adventure, magic, and mayhem and machines in the Sixth World. We have Makeda Red, standalone, and we have Elfin Black, also standalone, but every single Shadowrun story or novella that I write, characters will cross over, but they're all standalone, so you can come in any order. But if you have to pick one, go to Makeda Red if you want to stay on Earth, and go to Iron Dawn if you want to go into space.
Makeda Red is the first book I read that introduced me to Jennifer, and I have Elfin Black on my nightstand right now, and I have Rogue Academy on the bookshelf right next to my couch right here. So I'm not a fan, but of Jennifer at all, clearly. So, all right, back to number 2. What's the next thing that I'm going to go back and watch and then read all these books later?
Well, for me, you would start with Salvage Title, which is the first novel I wrote, the first thing I ever had published. The first publisher I ever talked to said yes. And within 2 years, it got picked up for a movie deal. That's the way it's supposed to work, right? Are you guys? And that's how it works. Yeah, that did happen. Now, it's a great story to say the first publisher I ever talked to. I spent 6 months studying whether I wanted to do independent, small press, if I wanted to get an agent. I did all those things, found the right small publisher, found out what he put out, what he liked. He's retired military too. So yes, I did approach Chris Kennedy for Chris Kennedy Publishing, and he said yes, but there was more to it. But it does make for a great story to say it was the first publisher. But
it does.
I put a lot of work into that. And I also write songs. I've had 10 songs published, cut out of Nashville. So I've been told no hundreds upon hundreds of times. It was in just a different medium.
Fair.
So that helped a little bit in pitching and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, Salvage Title is what you want to start with. That's my science fiction. There are 20 books in the universe now.
So many questions about that. So I'm going to need you totally to come back. There's 20 books?
There's 20 books in the universe now because I've opened it and we've opened it. My son and Melissa Olthoff, they just turned in a trilogy they wrote in the universe. And so.
That's awesome. Cool. Oh, how exciting. Our third one is William, correct?
Yeah, that'd be me. I think if you were going to read anything by me that would let you know who I am and what I write, it would be like Kevin. It would be the first novel I had published. It wasn't the first one I wrote. It was simply the first one that deserved to be published and got published. And it's called Standing the Final Watch. It's military sci-fi. But unlike many of them, it's not set in space. It's set here on Earth in the very near future. And the only real science fiction to it is cryogenics. If I can get you over that hurdle, then you would like the series. And it is very military oriented and all that. There are currently 21 books in the series, and total of all the various incarnations and subsets. And then there are 7 more coming this year, including some more anthologies, in which Kevin Steverson has already written, and DJ has a story sitting in my inbox now that I've got to write. So for me, that's what I write. Fantasy, I write space stuff, but that's the one that I'm best known for.
So just between the two of you, you're going to keep me reading for a year just on these series. So I'm pretty excited. Excellent. Our fourth is DJ, right?
Yep. So I'm going to break from tradition a little bit. I'm going to say that my latest book is always my best book because I'm still learning and growing. I think you can browse through. I've been a little bit scattered in my author career. I mostly write what I want to at that particular moment. So I've written urban fantasy, I've written lit RPG, I've written science fiction. It's probably not the best thing short term, but I think in the long term, it's going to pay off. And I've got a couple shorts out there too, if you just want to dip your toe in the water. So I did a kind of a really neat one recently called The Phoenix of Ankara, which is actually based off a card game that we released as a Kickstarter. So it's the story that goes with the card game, which I think is probably appropriate for this audience. It's just maybe 100 pages, I think. But it's inside the card game world, except it's not explicit. So if you know the game, you can see it happening as it goes. But if you don't know the game, it's just a good story. And the main character dies at the end, and I think I actually pulled that off. So I was really proud of that one from a craft standpoint. If you're looking for the Fivefold Universe, which is where Perseus comes in, we've got the Starborn Heir, which is kind of the linchpin title that we've got within the series. It's also a multi-author universe, so I think most of the people in this call have, in one way or another, no, all of them actually have participated in a multi-author universe. So yes, you have lots and lots and lots of reading to catch up on.
Awesome. Cool. Kevin McLaughlin?
Hey, so I will have my 100th book published later this year.
What?
Yeah, I've been doing this for a little while too. In terms of places to start, it really depends. Like there's 27 books out in the Steel Dragon universe from LMBPM. If you like urban fantasy, those are great. Uh, I just had a book released yesterday called Deadly Fathoms. It's a science fiction near future colony story. And that one was a lot of fun to write, actually. So if you want to read something that's light and fun and good adventure without a lot of it's not a deep story, it's a fun story. But I had a lot of fun writing it, and so far people are enjoying the read. So that's a good one to check out.
And I feel like I've asked everyone, where do I start? And now with Kevin Anderson, I feel like I have to ask, where do I even start?
Well, I think that the only real way you can get a true flavor and perspective is to just read all of them. And I'm up to 180 books at last count. So I hope you've got a big book stack going on there. A lot of people have read my Star Wars books. I did 54 projects for Lucasfilm. The Jedi Academy trilogy is probably the best known one. I've done now 20 books with Brian Herbert in Frank Herbert's Dune universe. And yes, we both worked on the film last year and the new one that's coming out this year. But the ones that are like closest to my heart that I'm really proudest of are a steampunk trilogy that I wrote with Neil Peart, the drummer from Rush, based on their album Clockwork Angels, and that's airships and alchemy and lost cities and pirates, and they're just like the closest to my heart. Clockwork Angels is the first one, but sometimes for a real lot of fun, I very much enjoy this humorous horror series I have called Dan Shamble Zombie PI. And I just published the 8th book in that series. And, I write big, serious space opera epics like Tears of Perseus, but sometimes you just want to be stupid. And that's what I had to do. So lots of different things. And if you read all 180 of them, you can tell me which one's your favorite. I'll expect to hear from you by next week.
Oh my gosh. Wikipedia will be my no. Awesome. That is so cool. I love the idea of the steampunk trilogy. I've been newly into steampunk, so that's very exciting. So I'm going to skip ahead a couple questions because Kevin Anderson, I've already talked to you about maybe coming back and talking about some of your Kickstarters you've worked on. So I'll save some of these questions for later, even though I totally want to fangirl a little bit. But I want to get right into Tears of Perseus. So what is it? What is the overarching series about?
So Tears of Perseus is actually, if you think of the Fivefold universe as a universe or a franchise, it's the Horus Heresy of that universe, right? It's the backstory. It's the reason why there are no AIs in the later books, that are, at least if they are, they're hidden. It's the reason why the kind of the peacekeepers, if you're thinking in terms of Farscape, are the way they are. It's the reason why a lot of technology is the way there is. It's not an anthology. It's one story told by 6 authors at 6 key points in the escalation of the conflict over the course of about 300 years. And in the process, we go through the colonization of a planet, someone trying to claim someone's property in a story of murder. We go through a prison break, 2 very large-scale space battles. We go through a Terminator-style Judgment Day, and also kind of a hopeful post-apocalyptic story where people come back together. We like to tell people that the vibe you're going to get from reading the Fivefold universe in general is somewhere between The Expanse and Firefly and BattleTech. It has more hope than Warhammer 40K. It's a little bit more gritty and economic based than Star Trek. There's more science than Star Wars, but we're floating in that general space. It's a story about us being human, what makes us different, what makes us fight, what makes us come back together. And I'm not just excited about the story, though I am, obviously. But I'm also excited about how that story came together. It's told by some incredible authors. I mean, in the same group, we've got multiple award winners and international bestsellers. We've got authors who've done indie, small press, traditional, and media tie-in. We've got several core sci-fi fandoms represented. So we've got BattleTech, we've got Shadowrun, we've got Star Wars, Dune, Four Horsemen universe, The Last Brigade, and of course the Fivefold universe. I didn't even approach any of these authors without having read at least one of their full-length novels, and I liked all of them. So it was just really cool to bring all these people together. To sum up, lots of conflict. It's got a hopeful finish, and some pretty kind of one-of-a-kind elements that we haven't seen together a lot in the industry. So it's not your average sci-fi anthology.
Awesome. Oh, how cool. Neat. Does anybody have anything to add based on DJ's description?
Well, I wanted to jump in and because when mine just came out a couple of days ago, and I had a bunch of my fans saying, yes, I'm going to go and buy yours. And I had to say, no. You got to start at the beginning and read through that. These aren't, it's like a novel. Well, it is a novel. You can't just pick and choose like Bill's because he has the longest hair or something like that. It's got to be, you've got to read them in order, and it's all one big story. So that's, and even that is just a tiny microcosm of this vast universe with the vast war going on.
That's awesome.
And the other thing I'd throw out is since we had Kevin J. Anderson involved in the project, we made the most of it and got him to write 2 novellas instead of 1. So at the end of each piece of this, you actually have a character who, through things I won't spoil, manages to be at those key inflection points throughout. And Kevin Anderson was the one who wrote those. And it all leads into his novella, which is novella number 5. So you really get that interconnectedness between all the different pieces.
That's so cool. A really unique idea, and I think really fun. I was excited to hear about this project. All right, so I want to go into each of the novellas a little bit. So starting with the first one, Jennifer and Kevin Anderson. I co-wrote is the wrong word, I'm understanding.
It's mainly Jennifer. She should be talking about this one.
Okay, all right. So Jen, Trumille's Lights. It chronically takes place in the year 799. So tell us a little bit about it.
So this is a story of a colony ship. It has been likened to the crew of the Interstellar with the dynamics of the alien crew. So there's a lot of cliques. There's a lot of love. It's about family. It's about legacy, and it's about sacrifice. So I started this off and had to set up the planetary system, which was super important because it is a very unusual planetary system. And I'm not going to get into it because I went to Launchpad, a astronomy workshop for writers, so that I could do this kind of thing, so I could talk with real science. And I consulted with real scientists to make sure that the science was right, because I didn't want Kevin to come back to me and be like, you do realize that could never happen. Anyway.
The well, actually,
yeah, I did a lot of that in my other stuff, but this is basically about 2 families who are homesteaders. Think homesteaders in space, and nobody is a homesteader because they like to follow the rules. And the main characters are a pair of sisters who happen to have married into these 2 families who hate each other, but the sisters absolutely love each other.
Aww.
And it's one of those things that I always wanted. I like it when you have family dynamics where the siblings, they're not necessarily rivals. They do support each other, even though they may be on opposite sides of the fence. And they're from a family of explorers, and they discover that there's this planet that's off plan, and thus they might, if they went to this one planet over here, they might be able to get out from under the corporation's thumb. But there are so many dangers, and it's a colony ship built by the lowest common denominator, the least expensive construction crew. So things are going wrong, and so it is an ensemble cast, but it's mainly focused around the two sisters who are captaining their scout ship.
Cool.
And they find it together. They have to convince everybody that yes, we want to risk 20,000 lives and go check out this other planet. And it's really, all the while they're having two families fighting over the legacy that could happen. And they're willing to sacrifice all to ensure a future for both families.
And Kevin, how did you, what was your contribution to the first novella?
Well, I kind of have to explain the whole thing, because the 6 pieces take place over 3 centuries.
Yeah.
And if I was going to have like little connecting stories all the way through, well, how are you going to have somebody that is in all the stories over 3 centuries?
Right.
And so I came up with a guy who's in Isaac Asimov's foundation things. He had Hari Seldon, who invented psychohistory, who could use mathematics and predictive to find the inflection points throughout human history. And I kind of drew upon that to have a very wealthy, very bored kind of Richard Branson guy who he and his AI have developed this beautiful yellow brick road for humanity. Like here's the way we have a beautiful, perfect future. And they plotted it all out. And so he and his AI have like set the wheels in motion. And then he's like Rip Van Winkle. He wants to see what it does. So he goes into cryosleep and wakes up decades or a century later to see what happened. And of course, humans do exactly what calculations are supposed to do, right? So everything is exactly on plan every single time he wakes up. No, not. And so it gets worse and worse every time he wakes up. So he has more extreme, like course corrections that he's trying. And so he's kind of in the background, and he's in some of these other stories, some more active than others. In Jen's, it's kind of more peripheral. And in other ones, it's much more direct. So that's the setup for each of these connecting stories. It's Richard Branson, Rip Van Winkle waking up and going, "You guys didn't do what you were supposed to do," and then
awesome.
So
Cool.
we'll move on to Kevin Steverson and his piece next.
Cool. So it sounds like you both wrote separately. You didn't really collaborate
Right.
on. Okay, cool.
No,
All
but
right,
I would absolutely always love to write with Kevin Anderson.
I mean,
Oh. All right.
all in favor?
I'll call you tomorrow, Jen. We'll get it this year.
Okay. I've got some time this year.
I know I'll be reading 2,800 books by the 6 of you. So awesome. All right. So book 2, Kevin Steverson and Kevin Anderson. Now, did you have more of a collaborative approach to this story, or is it still very separated in this one?
It's still separated.
Okay.
It goes all the way through all the novellas. So, and
it takes place 200 years after the first novella, right?
Right. The planet's been established, and mine is he's a retired senior NCO, and he wanted to see the galaxy, and in order to do that, he had to join the Federation's Marines, the troops. And so, even though his family didn't want him to, they wanted him to continue farming, because they have a huge corporate style farming with thousands and thousands of hectares. But he wanted to see everything, and he wanted to go. So he went off, did his time in the service, and he was in a unit that is not on the books per se. And when he came back, part of his reward, or part of his award was some land of his own. So he starts farming on his own. Go figure. He didn't want to be a farmer, but he came back and retired and became one. But then those corporations get involved, and they want to take his land to build a new space elevator. And I mean, there's murder involved, and he's got his troops, the remainder of what was his unit, and they want all their land, and he's just not having it. He's just not. And that senior NCO and that stubbornness, and I might have thrown a little Southern stubbornness in it, because that's just the way I am. My family is, what's ours is ours, and that's the end of it. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So it takes it from there, and he just happens to be in one of those 2 founding families, and that corporation may happen to be the other side there. So
That's awesome.
That's all part of it too.
And the second novella is called Falk's Claim, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Any insight from you, Kevin Anderson, on how your part of the story progresses into the second novella?
Let me just wait until it's my turn to tell my part, and I'll say
Okay.
how the threads go through. So
you got it. We can do that. Okay. All right. So the third book is 12 years after the second novella. So we went from 200 years to now just 12 years later. And it's Mercia's Hammer. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Mercia's Hammer. Yes.
Okay. And this one's by Bill.
It is. Mercy's Hammer is about a gentleman who is living on one of the prosperous, relatively peaceful planets, but they, like many of them that are not near the major shipping lanes and all that, they have problems with pirates occasionally and things like that. So they're going to build their own armory, so their own militia can take care of this, and they don't have to rely on the Federation. But the Federation overreacts and decides that he is leading an insurrection. And during the commissioning ceremony for the armory, he and others are summarily taken up by the black helicopters, so to speak, and they vanish. And his daughter decides that it's her job to find where he is taken and rescue him, even though she's not a warrior or anything. So it takes her years to do this. She has to do some things she doesn't want to do to find out, because it's a black site. Nobody knows where it is.
Yeah.
And it's set on I'm particularly fascinated by the idea of an ocean under an ice planet. And so that's where this prison is set. The outer crust of this world is ice, hundreds of feet thick, but the inner part is water. It has a solid core, but there's an ocean underneath the ice, and that's where the prison is set. It's completely surrounded by water, and you just have one shaft to get there with a platform at the top, and it's anchored to the sea floor. So it's almost impossible to break in, but of course you wouldn't have much of a story if they didn't. And so it was challenging, but a blast to design this and think of the way in and that kind of thing, because I really do particularly enjoy writing about characters in extremis who come up with original ways to survive and outthink their oppressors, and then just to blow things up.
That's awesome. Cool. I like the prison heist kind of play to it, and even the whole lead up to Mercia and her adventure sounds really fascinating. So
it was, and within the prison they're doing some experiments on the prisoners they shouldn't be doing, and so there's that as an added motivation.
Excellent. Oh wow, cool. All right, so from there we go to DJ's book, which is Metzler's Mistake. Am I saying that right?
That's the one.
All right. So what happens 5 years after Mercia's Hammer?
So by this point, we've gone through the plot, right? We start out with the independent colonists, and then we start out with a legal dispute, right? Someone wants land, someone says you can't have it. And then we get to kind of extrajudicial arrests and basically the Federation being a little heavy-handed. But up to now, we're dealing with classic unrest, right? If shots are fired, it's usually they're shooting over each other's heads, except in Kevin Steverson's case, where they just blow the living crap out of everything. And I actually cackled out loud reading his book because I'm a former Marine, and that kind of stuff just makes me laugh. But so far, it hasn't been a widespread conflict, right? It's been these little key things. It's been people throwing tea leaves into the harbor kind of deal. Metzler's Mistake is where all that changes. I wrote it kind of out of my love for franchises like BattleTech, The Expanse, and Battlestar Galactica. It's a story of things going wrong in spite of the best of intentions, in spite of competent people on both sides, in spite of really human people and synthetic human people as well, who don't want this to turn into a bloodbath. There's no villain in it. It's really the situation that was set up by Jen and Kevin and Bill's stories that kind of push the situation to this thing, but it turns into the mother of all misunderstandings with fire raining from the sky and fire all the missiles and everything's gone wrong. It's going from when humans are willing to kind of risk their lives or fight for things that they need to saying that we're going to kill you and this war is not going to end until one side is dead. And that was kind of the interest of that progression as we went through the novels, which is even going to go further with Kevin Anderson's book. It was originally called The Peace of Kalan, which is what the locals call how they settled the planet, because they also had feuding groups. But the captain essentially took control of the armory and held them both at gunpoint and forced them to sit at the table. But this is the story of the opposite. It's two sides that didn't want to fight and ended up blowing the living daylights out of each other.
Wow.
So that's where it goes. And actually, it's a direct handoff. So the end of my story is directly where Kevin Anderson's story picks up and then rolls into his full-on novella. So I'll let him continue.
Kevin, take it away.
Well, this is like exactly one of those TV shows where there's all this great stuff happening and then it fades to black and the words come on that say 1 week earlier and then it goes back and start. So my guy, whose name is Cal Radin, the Richard Branson kind of guy, he's got an AI companion that's helping him figure out the best route for the human race. And so he's figured he puts all this stuff into motion in at the end of Jen's novella. And then he wakes up 200 years later and finds you guys screwed it all up. And so he goes to like the capital planet and addresses Parliament or Congress or whatever. And he's kind of naive and arrogant because he was rich and powerful, but they've forgotten about him in 200 years. He shows up on the floor and he's like Rip Van Winkle, this old dinosaur, and he's telling them what they're supposed to do. And so basically the secret police whisk him away in the middle of the night and they throw him into this prison, Bill Webb's prison. And his AI actually helps him break out with part of this prison break. And then he's done now. He's done his best to help. He wanted humanity to grow up and put his big boy pants on, but they're insisting on not behaving themselves. So he just goes to this quiet planet. He just wants to retire. And that's where DJ's big crap fest happens and everything goes wrong. And what he does is like, I'm out of here. He checks out and he goes into suspended animation again, right before at the end of DJ's books, when this big disaster happens. But when he wakes up some decades later, when my novella starts, during the time he's been down, his AI and one of his Padawans that he like rescued during this disaster, they have turned him into like this Osama bin Laden figure. He's been asleep, but they've made him into this Dread Pirate Roberts who's doing all these horrific terrorist acts and blowing up things. And right before the guy, Cal Radin, wakes up, these rebels have done a horrific, they blow up a space elevator and it kills all kinds of people, and it's all done in his name. And when he wakes up to find out that these bad guys have made him into a hero, he's got to fight against it and try to fix things, because he always gets his foot in it trying to fix things. Well, the problem is this commander of the is it the Perseus military? It's been months since I wrote that. I'm trying to remember it's this commander thinks that he's her enemy. He's Osama bin Laden. So she is out to get this guy with all the might of her military force. And he's kind of caught in the middle of things, and it escalates, and everybody's trying to keep things going. And the AIs, which we're building into our Terminator Judgment Day things, they're trying to fix humanity so that we don't go astray anymore. And you can guess how well that's going to go. So,
yeah.
So that's kind of where we're up to, because mine just got published, and then it is leading into Kevin McLaughlin's, who is the last.
Yeah. And I see what you mean too about like you can't just pick up the fifth book because his story starts back. There's so
and you have to know these other pieces and how it's building up to this 300-year war. It's not like a Helen of Troy, one little event makes it all happen. It's different.
Okay. All right. Fascinating. So that's leading me, I'm getting like more excited as we go. So like, I want to hear the ending now. So Kevin McLaughlin, tell me all about, the last one is called, I want to make sure I get this right, Holloway's Charge.
Yes.
Okay.
So for my book, basically everything has gone sideways. Really, really badly, and the Federation fleet is starting to roll up the carpets and lock the doors. They're beginning a withdrawal from the planet, so they're escorting their citizens out. So as they're going along, let's see, without giving away too much of the book plot, the story is one about people on the edge of everything kind of breaking apart and collapsing. Society is starting to break down. The connections between systems, which were integral to the spread of technology and to survival of these colonies and stuff, is all falling apart. So there's a bunch of choices that people have to make between what is easy and smart and what is right and what's the good thing to do. And so a lot of the decisions that are made are essentially moral questions. The characters are faced with a series of moral dilemmas, and they make the best choices that they can. And the choices are imperfect. The characters are flawed. Nobody in this is like a perfect sterling hero, but they're doing the best that they can to be good people in a really, really bad situation. And the story ends on an upbeat note for the future, and it trails off into the other books that have been written in this universe and that happen far in the future that are part of that like more hopeful rising tide universe that comes along after this.
Neat. How did it feel? I feel like as all of this has been ramping up, you got this novella, and it's like, yeah, now clean up what all the other authors did.
I volunteered. I had like 3, I think, different novellas I could choose from when I got it tagged for this, and I was like, no, that one sounds like fun. I'll do that one.
Cool, awesome. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but DJ, I want to hear about. So there's 6 novellas in the series, and then I saw on the timeline of events that the Starborn Heir comes after. So what is that, and when does that take place?
So AIs being AIs, they decide to hedge their bets, right? So in one way, we have Kevin J. Anderson's story where they take one route to try to correct humanity's course. And obviously, this is not a nice story, even though it ends on an upbeat note. So things go wrong. Mm-hmm. The other way they hedge their bets is, and it's a little bit of a tip of the hat to Battlestar Galactica, 13 of them decide to take splinter colony fleets and just bug out as far out from the galactic core as they can. And so they take different groups of colonists from both sides, right? And sometimes it's Federation military guarding Perseid prisoners of war and just saying, look, we're out of the war. We're going to make this work. We're going to be friends, whether you like it or not. And if you don't like it, then the airlock's right there. But they just basically run as far and as fast as they can. Some of them don't make it. Some of them get caught along the way. And they set up these new societies. And it's a little bit like the vaults in Fallout, where each society has a little key characteristic. And so Starborn Heir is one of these societies 3,000 years later that ran away from the war. And they built this society that's based off Plato's Republic. So they're actually the gentlemen and lady statespeople. They want to be good stewards of power. And the main character is the son of the planetary governor who's supposed to inherit the planet when he turns 40 after spending 40 years learning how to rule. And he just wakes up one day after putting, 26 years of study and hardship and competing against all the other possible heirs, because it really is an intense meritocracy. And he decides, you know what, I'm in the lead position right now and I don't want it. So he drops the trust fund, he gathers a crew, his father puts him on the no-fly list, so he steals a shuttle and he blasts off to be a space pirate, and that's where the story goes. There is a character that is in Tears of Perseus that is also in Starborn Air. If you can imagine what kind of character would be able to be there 3,000 years later and all the problems that would entail. One of the things that we tried to do in the Fivefold Universe is, the symbol for the Fivefold Universe is actually a 5 cube. So it's a multi-dimensional cube. And it's meant to be layered and interconnected. So all of these novellas and the Starborn Air and all the other books are actually one gigantic story that will eventually come together into something that fans and readers can participate in. And I'm really excited to get there. It's going to take a couple more years, but I think it's going to be fun. My wife and head of marketing and I are also experimenting with other stuff in the Starborn Air. So, for example, we have a music composer working on scoring it to see how we can mix music and story. We have some character vignettes, so you can actually sign up for a mailing list. That's not like your traditional mailing list where we spam you once a month for 12 months. But it's actually little character vignettes of each of the main characters that you can just get as you read the book to see, oh, this is where they came from, or this is a key point in their life. So it's really kind of a combination of a book that follows up on the Tears of Perseus, but also kind of a little experimental lab where we're trying new things and how to interact with readers.
That's really cool. I love that. Please keep me posted as more comes out, so we can bring you back and talk some more about it, because it sounds really fun. All right, so for the sake of time, because we're pretty much at time here, I just want to make one more round robin here. Where can our audience find you and your community to follow what you're working on and get their own set of Tears of Perseus? So let's start with Jennifer. Where do people find you?
I'm most active on Twitter right now at Jennifer Brozek. And I'm also on Twitch twice a month with our Elrond's Eberron game, again on Twitch. And JenniferBrozek.com has all of my different novels and such.
Beautiful. Thank you. Kevin Steverson.
Yeah, you can find me at kevinsteverson.com or on any of the social medias, your Facebooks and Instagram and Twitter, just by typing in my name, it'll pop up. So, but kevinsteverson.com will take you where you need to go.
Awesome. Bill?
My website is thelastbrigade.com, and you can learn more about me there than you could ever possibly want to know.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's got all my stuff.
Great, thank you. DJ?
You can just type my name into Google and you will find many ways to interact with me. You can also go to fivefolduniverse.com to see our website and also our wiki, where we have schematics of ships and articles on the tech and all that kind of stuff.
Is that where we go to get our copies of the books too?
You can get the books on Amazon. It's also linked on the website. So all roads lead to Rome.
Awesome. And that the speaker off camera is the wonderful Ellie, by the way. Ellie, you should come say hi because we love you. Ellie is amazing at coordinating all this. So wanted to give you a shout out before we end the show here. Kevin McLaughlin.
Well, you can find me right now at my long ignored and neglected website at kevinomclaughlin.com. But almost everything I've ever written is up on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. That's a great place to look. If you want to binge all my books, please do. I do have a community hub site going up later this year, though. It's a big experiment. It'll be prosci-fi.com.
Ooh,
but
cool.
That's a couple months out yet, probably.
Okay, let me know when that's up. We should talk about it.
Sure.
And last but not least, once again, Kevin J. Anderson.
I'm pretty much most active on Facebook. You can just search official Kevin J. Anderson page, just because I can post more pictures and stuff there. And I also have a Twitter account. It's and then my initials KJA. But my main website is wordfire.com, like words on fire, wordfire.com. And I do have a more traditional newsletter you can sign up there, but you want to do that because you get like free audiobooks and free books of mine and fun newsletters because I post pictures of my canyon hikes and my mountain climbs and my cats and my lasagna recipes and stuff like that, as well as telling you to buy my books. So so sign up for that and you can just see what else I've got going. Oh, and there is a probably very outdated list right now of maybe the first 170 books that I published. So that'll get you started at least.
Yeah, that will tide me over for now while you get the rest updated. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for coming to talk with me. Congratulations on your series. I can't wait for the last one to be released. And I think DJ, you said the full omnibus is going to be available in March.
Yeah, so we'll all of these copies have been digital. We'll put out a paper version of it probably around March, and maybe we'll add a few Easter eggs and extra things to it to make it worthwhile.
Awesome. Well, thank you all once again. Don't go anywhere though, because we will be right back, Rem PCs. In the shadows, it's only a matter of time before one has to choose sides. What will our runner's latest job cost them? Why is their target so valuable? Who will survive the chilling conclusion of the Redstone arc? Join us for A Dish Served Cold in the next episode of Shadowrun 6th World Emerald Glitch, coming up next on Gen Con TV. Don't forget that we have a wonderful giveaway of the complete digital set of the novella series Tears of Perseus by our amazing guests today. Thank you so much for donating such a cool prize. Don't forget to get bonus entries and impact the game by donating bits and subs in chat and type in #RemPC for your free entry. All funds help us to pay our cast and crew and keep producing content. You can also pick up t-shirts and merch at our Etsy store at remalternus.com/Etsy. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time, Rem PCs.